Sometimes you find things in the ground in the most unexpected places. Today we're going to the land of Babylon. In the late 1800s, a piece of clay was found there that had a very interesting connection to one of the most important stories in all of the Bible.
Welcome to Digging Deeper, the podcast where we talk about the geography, archaeology, people, cultures of the lands of the Bible. By exploring these areas, we hope to broaden your understanding of the biblical narrative. You can learn more about us here at Appian Media and watch our free video series at www.appianmedia.org. Our sponsor for today's episodes are CEI Bookstore and Sacred Connections. We will be more than happy to tell you a little bit more about them later in our show. Well, Barry, what is the Cyrus Cylinder?
Well, the Cyrus Cylinder is an ancient clay cylinder that unfortunately, when it was found and over the years, has been broken into several pieces. But it's been reassembled and is currently on display in London, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But it's fairly small. It's about the size of a football. The first time I saw it, I guess I had thought it was going to be larger. When I got there, it was much smaller. It's only about 8 or 9 inches long, and in the middle part, which is the widest part, it's only about 4 inches wide. The writing on all sides of it, all the way around it, are in some Akkadian cuneiform script. It was found in the late 1800s by a British archaeologist, and that it kind of explains why it is where it is, which is in the British Museum in London.
Okay. Everything important seems to be there so
That's
far.
That's right. Everybody needs to make a trip to the British Museum.
Yes. So if it has writing all over it, do we know what it says?
Well, we do. I'm not an expert on this type of cuneiform script, but
me either.
I can read on the internet people who are much smarter than I am. But the text on the cylinder praises the Persian King Cyrus the Great. And we actually read about Cyrus the Great in the Bible, which is one of the reasons why we want to talk about this today. It sets out his genealogy, portrays him as a king from a line of kings, and it portrays him, remember, in their own style, as being chosen by the Babylonian god Marduk to restore peace and order after the Babylonians ruled. By this time, the Medes and the Persians had come into rule, and so it depicts that Cyrus would come and provide peace for everyone. The Assyrians before the Babylonians, as well as the Babylonians, had gone out and conquered people, and they had brought them back to their land. And one of the things that Cyrus wanted to do was send people back to their homeland. And of course, this is important because this has a direct application to some of the stories that we read in the Bible. I mean, as you know, the northern kingdom of Israel was carried off into Assyrian captivity. The southern kingdom of Judah was carried off into Babylonian captivity. So that by the time King Cyrus came to power, he wanted to send not only the inhabitants of the northern and southern kingdom, but other peoples back to their home. It also talks about how he wanted them to not only return, but also rebuild their culture. And so he wanted them to go back and rebuild their cities, rebuild their places of worship, things like that. And so what's interesting about this is that if you open up your Bible and read from it, there's some interesting passages specifically in the book of Ezra connected directly to this event and this cylinder in particular. So if you don't mind, Dan, look at Ezra, the very beginning of the book, first chapter. Read the first 4 verses for us.
Okay. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put in writing, Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you of all his people, may his God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and rebuild the house of the Lord, the God of Israel. He is the God who is in Jerusalem. And let each survivor, in whatever place he sojourns, be assisted by the men of his place with silver and gold, with goods and with beasts, besides freewill offerings for the house of God that is in Jerusalem.
All right. So, thank you for reading that. You can see from this passage King Cyrus wants the people to go back to their land. When they get there, rebuild the temple. And that's the exact same language that we see on the Cyrus Cylinder. Now, the Cyrus Cylinder doesn't mention the Israelites specifically on there, but it mentions all the peoples that were in captivity going back to the land. And then we can open up our Bibles and read from Ezra that of how this exactly happened for the Israelites.
So until the Cyrus Cylinder was there, we knew Cyrus sent the Israelites, but we didn't know this was something that he did for all the people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, this is just something that, for instance, was found in the dirt that matches up so well with the biblical story. So, as I said, Dan and I have both seen the Cyrus Cylinder. You would think that all you have to do is fly to London to see it, but as it turns out, it's not always that easy. And we want to tell you that story in just a moment.
We want to take a moment and talk about our sponsors. During the entire history of Appian Media, we have had several companies that reached out to us and offered to sell our products. One of the first to contact us was CEI Bookstore. CEI Bookstore has been in business for over 70 years, and they're a nonprofit religious bookstore and retail supplier of books, Bibles, church supplies, and other religious resources. They're located in Athens, Alabama, but they actually serve customers all throughout the entire United States. If you are in need of any of their wonderful products that they have to offer, we encourage you to reach out to them through their website at truthbooks.com. That's truthbooks.com. Sacred Connections is a safe online space for Christians to connect and build meaningful relationships. With a focus on community and channels dedicated to various interests and events, there is something for users at every life stage. And right now, when you download the app, if you use the code Digging Deeper, you will receive a special discount, and that is good for all listeners of the Digging Deeper podcast. So we invite you to start your journey by going to their website today and learn more. Their address is sacredconnections.com. That's sacredconnections.com. Now back to the show.
Okay, so once again, how do you go about seeing the Cyrus Cylinder?
Well, you just go to London, you get on the tube, go to the British Museum, and you walk in.
Okay, all right. So I've always been kind of a big fan of this artifact, so I really want to see this artifact. So in 2013, I did exactly that. My wife and I had flown to London. We went over there for our 20th wedding anniversary with another couple, and we did what you said. We got on the tube. We went over to the British Museum.
Wait, and you said 2013?
Yes.
Okay, I know where you're going with this now.
Oh, yeah, 2013. So I got over there and found it. As you know, this museum is huge, but finally found it. And when I got there, there was a small card in the display case telling me that it was not located at the British Museum. It was on tour in the United States. And so...
And the funny thing is, I was actually seeing it at that time.
Oh, I know. So how did you see it?
Well, I actually had noticed that it was on tour, and I got to looking at the places, and one weekend just lined up perfectly for me. So my son and I flew to Houston, and I went very first thing in the morning. I was in line at the museum even before it opened because I wanted to beat the crowds. Yeah. I got my pictures. Samuel got his pictures, and then we spent the day in Houston and flew home.
Okay, and in the process of flying home, at some point you called me and told me that you had not only seen it, but you had pictures of it. And so I was doubly, extremely jealous of you. And so as it turns out, the next week or maybe 2 weeks later, I flew to Washington, D.C., and the Cyrus Cylinder had moved from Houston to Washington. It was in one of the Smithsonian buildings. So I took some time at the end of the workday and took the metro over to the Smithsonian building, went in, made my way down, and I could see it. It was down the hall, lit up. I could finally see it. I approached it, pulled out my camera, and as I was about to click, this huge hand landed on my shoulder, and it was the security guard. And he just simply said, "No pictures." And it was at that point I noticed a small little sign down in the very corner of the display case that said "No pictures." And I was incredibly disappointed because, I wanted to use this
Oh, that breaks my heart.
in teaching or whatever. And not only did I not have the picture, but I knew that you had one, and I wanted to try to figure out a way to catch up. So 2 years later, my wife and I flew back over to London and for another vacation, and we made it to the Cyrus Cylinder in the British Museum, and I got my picture.
Oh, that is such a happy ending.
It really is, but I didn't realize that to get that picture, I would need to fly to Europe, to the UK twice, and go to Washington, D.C. So I had to travel all over the world just to get that picture.
But that's a great point for people who travel and want to go see things. On tour, sometimes you go to a museum wanting to show people stuff. I've led a tour to Istanbul, to Turkey and Greece, and the museum in Istanbul had construction going on, and all of the artifacts I wanted to show were not able to be seen.
So everybody, you just got to stick with it. You just got to keep going back. You'll eventually get where you want to be.
Now, I have often said that the purpose of archaeology isn't to prove the Bible, but it does provide understanding, enlightenment about the Bible, about history in general. And I think it does prove the Bible, but in some ways that's not the point of it. Looking at this with the Cyrus Cylinder, I think we're reminded of really several things. First, it does remind me that the people and the events of the Bible are true. You can look and see the Israelite people, they did live in the land, and they disobeyed God. And then, because as God told them, they were carried away into Babylonian captivity. But thankfully, as the book of Ezra tells us, God stirred up the spirit of Cyrus to allow the captives to return to their homeland. And if you think about it, we are in the same situation. If we don't do as God says, we will, just as God predicts, be punished for the things that we do. It's happened in the past. It's going to happen in the future. But second, I'm reminded that we need to be kind to each other. Over the years, the Iranian people have asked for the Cyrus Cylinder to be returned to their museum because they see it as part of their heritage. They actually refer to it as the very first human rights charter, in which people are encouraged to live and worship as they desire. Now, it can be debated as to whether or not Cyrus actually believed that all men are created in the image of God. And the truth is, he probably didn't. But he still seemed to respect and wanted people to respect each other. And that is the lesson that is so needed every day, and even more as we see this world going.
Digging Deeper is a product of Appian Media. We're a nonprofit media production company that is 100% crowd-funded. If you're interested in learning more about how you can support Appian Media so that we can create more great free content, visit us at appianmedia.org/listen. If you'd like to contact either one of us, you can reach Dan at dan.kingsley@appianmedia.org, and you can reach me at barry.britnell@appianmedia.org. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions that you may have. Dan and I are in front of the microphones, but it takes many more people to produce this podcast. So a special thanks to Craig DeHutt and the rest of the Appian Media team, who are all doing their part to make this a success. Join us next time as Dan and I travel down to the Shephelah and visit the ancient city of Lachish, and we'll see what's going on down there. Until then, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again on the next episode of Digging Deeper.